All right, today we are diving into one of the most explosive topics in health, wellness, and frankly, human enhancement right now: peptides. People are calling them the next great frontier, promising everything from, completely radical weight loss to literally reversing the signs of aging.
But what is the real story here? I mean, are these tiny molecules the miracle cures they're being hyped up to be? Or are people just taking massive risks, running unregulated experiments on their own bodies? That's the core question we're really going to dig into today.
I'm sure you've heard some of the buzzwords floating around, things like Ozempic face, that gaunt look from super fast weight loss, or the Wolverine peptide for supposedly superhuman injury recovery, and of course, the infamous Barbie drug, which promises a tan without ever seeing the sun. Look, this stuff isn't science fiction anymore. It's the very real and very, very new world of peptides. To really get what's happening, you've got to think of it like a gold rush. Seriously, you've got researchers, biohackers, anti-aging clinics. They're all scrambling to stake their claim. And that's creating this wild market that is, well, equal parts incredibly exciting and dangerously unregulated. Okay, so before we jump into all the wild claims and some of the jaw-dropping results, we have to get the basics down. Let's just ask the simple question: what exactly is a peptide? The easiest way to think about it is like this. If your DNA is the entire library of books on how to run your body, peptides are like tiny, specific text messages sent directly to your cells. Each one has a single, clear instruction. Hey, burn more fat, or build more muscle, or dial down the inflammation. They are incredibly precise signals, and that precision, that's what makes them so unbelievably powerful. And, that power is what leads to the incredible promise we keep hearing about. So why is everyone from Silicon Valley execs to Hollywood actors getting so excited? Well, it's because the results, both in official clinical trials and out there in the real world, are frankly staggering. Just take a look at these numbers. This comes from a major trial for a peptide called tirzepatide. The people taking the high dose lost, on average, almost 21% of their body weight. Now, to put that into perspective, that is getting really close to the kind of results you see from bariatric surgery. But it's done with a weekly injection. This is exactly why these drugs are being called a complete game changer for treating obesity. But the promise goes so much further than just weight loss. Some of these experimental peptides are targeting aging itself. So for example, there's a peptide called FOXO4-DRI that, in mice, works by clearing out what scientists call zombie cells. These are old, broken-down cells that just hang around, causing inflammation and aging. The idea is if you can get rid of them, you might just be able to restore youthful function to your tissues. Then you've got peptides for muscle growth, which is a whole other world. See, our bodies have a natural brake that stops us from building too much muscle. It's called myostatin. Well, an experimental therapeutic called follistatin basically works by cutting those brake lines. Animal studies show it leads to these profound increases in muscle mass, which is why it's being looked at for muscle wasting diseases. And then there's this: cognitive enhancement. And just look at that number, 1,000,000 times. No, that is not a typo. In lab studies, an experimental peptide called DHEXA was found to be about 1,000,000 times more potent than our body's own natural brain growth factor at creating new connections between neurons. They've literally called it a brain fertilizer, with some early data suggesting it could one day help repair brain damage from things like Alzheimer's. Okay, so the promise is, without a doubt, staggering. But now we have to pump the brakes and get grounded in reality, because for every one of these incredible potential benefits, there is a set of very serious risks and a whole lot of unknowns that paint a much, much more complicated picture. Let's go back to those blockbuster weight loss drugs. They are not a free ride, not by a long shot. The side effects are pretty common, especially nausea. We're talking affecting nearly half of all users, plus things like vomiting and diarrhea. And here's a really crucial point. You don't just lose fat. You often lose a significant amount of muscle mass right along with it, and that can create a whole new set of health problems down the road. And this table really just perfectly highlights the whole Wild West nature of the peptide world. On one end, you've got something like semaglutide, which is an actual FDA-approved prescription drug. But on the complete other end, you have things like BPC-157, that's the Wolverine peptide, or IGF-1LR3, which are not approved for human use at all and are banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency. People are buying these online as research chemicals with zero guarantee of what's actually in them. This is maybe the perfect example of the risk-reward calculation people are making. Melanotan 2, the Barbie drug, can give you a deep tan without any sun. Sounds great, right? But the risk? Well, it's terrifying. It can darken existing moles, which makes it much harder to spot skin cancer. And even worse, there are multiple case reports of melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer, developing in people just a short time after they started using it. So the bottom line is this. For the vast majority of these substances, we are completely flying blind. There are no long-term human studies. We have no idea what the risk of off-target effects is. Like, what does a powerful growth factor do to a tiny hidden tumor? The stuff from underground labs is a total gamble on purity and dosage. And what happens when you stop taking them? Well, with the weight loss drugs, we're seeing the weight often comes right back. For most of the others, we simply don't know. So where does all of this leave us? The potential is absolutely undeniable, but the dangers are very, very real. This isn't some simple story of good versus bad. This is the story of an incredibly powerful new technology that is just starting to emerge into the world. You know, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that peptides truly are a new frontier in medicine. And like any frontier, it is filled with incredible opportunity and immense danger. We are in the absolute earliest days of exploring this landscape, and that means it demands both our excitement for what's possible and our extreme caution in the here and now. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most critical question. As these tools get more powerful and way more accessible, we as a society are going to have to decide, where is the line? At what point does healing a disease become enhancing a perfectly healthy human? And who gets to make that call? That's the huge question this peptide revolution is forcing all of us to confront.